to you've got a diagnosis of lipedema. What now? My name's Nisa Higgins, and if you haven't seen anything that I've done before, welcome. I'm a lymphedema therapist and a medical intuitive, and I've been working in the field of lymphedema since 2006, which is when I first came across the term lipedema while I was doing some clinic hours after my qualification. And we had a client come in then and talk to me about this incredible disease that I'd never heard of. So I got an insight into it a long time ago. And then for a while, things were quiet. And with Lipedema Australia coming on board about 10 and a half years ago, the information started to get out, and more women realized that this is what they are struggling with. So there was more diagnosis, more information, and therefore I was seeing a lot more of it in my clinic. Now about 40% of what I do is lipedema, which is encouraging because it means more women are getting the information. And actually I've got one male client, so I should stop saying women because it doesn't affect just women, though predominantly it does. Now, Lipedema Australia is your go-to for support. They've got a website and they've got a private Facebook group, and I would recommend joining that Facebook group and asking questions there, or just having a search in their files for therapists and different therapies tried. They are a valuable resource. And while I'm talking about them, I'm going to show you, don't know if you can see this, but this is the early notification for their conference next year. So I'll leave this up and you can go onto their QR code if you like, and you can get all the details and register your interest. So they haven't booked the hotel where it's going to be held yet, but the dates, and it's going to be in Melbourne. And I strongly encourage you to attend. On so many levels, it's an amazing thing to do. So it's lots of people who look like you, who are welcoming, but there's also a lot of information on all of the different topics that you need to know about. So it's a win-win. I can't recommend it more highly. All righty, so questions. Before I start on questions, let me just say you don't always need a diagnosis of lipedema. You can do your own diagnosis, and you can be pretty sure whether you have it or not just by following all the indications that are, legs that are really large and you can't lose weight off of them, bruising, tenderness, pain, fat lobules at the knees, cuffing at the ankles. Of course, you don't have to have all of these things. You can have a few of these things. Not everybody, for example, presents with pain. And that can be a confusing one because one of the diagnostics is definitely pain. But we're all different. And sometimes I don't think that we realize that we're experiencing pain because we're just so used to it that it just seems part of our normal life. And pain is very subjective. So rating it even 1 to 10, well, it's discomfort. It's not pain. It's an ache. It's not sharp. So much as they like to say pain is a diagnostic criteria, it's not essential to have that. So if you feel that you have lipedema and you don't know where to start, then hopefully this is going to help you. Now, if you have had a diagnosis and you're feeling all of the feels of, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. I don't know what to do. I can't believe that I have this disease for the rest of my life and there's no cure. There's no pill. There's no test for it even. Feel those feels because they are very, very valid, and it's overwhelming. And if you need it, I encourage you to seek some help. You can talk to a professional counselor or a therapist of some sort, or find somebody like me who's a lymphatic drainage therapist who understands the condition and you can ask us lots of questions. But feeling overwhelmed, I think, is a very valid feeling. And I hope that this little talk will help alleviate some of those concerns, because there's so much that can be done for lipedema. You don't need to struggle, and you certainly don't need to struggle in silence. So if you're looking for a diagnosis, there are a few GPs around. There are some physios, some vascular surgeons, even some endocrinologists. So there are people scattered around the place who can diagnose, and it's a matter of finding others who have had a diagnosis and asking them where they got theirs from. And that's where Lipedema Australia, the support group, is really good. Now, if you have a doctor who dismisses you completely and tells you that you're just fat, that you're lazy, that lipedema is a made-up condition, then if possible, I'd be changing doctors. I know that isn't always possible if you're living rural, or just there's not many medical professionals around, but you need somebody who's supportive, somebody who's at least open to learning about the condition and supporting you through it. Now, I'm a lymphedema therapist, so the first thing I always talk about is getting manual lymphatic drainage, or MLD. This is what I do. It's a hands-on technique, and we gently, it's not like getting a remedial massage, which if you've got painful legs or painful arms is going to hurt. Though there's nothing wrong with getting one if you can cope with the pain, or if you don't get pain from that, knock yourself out. There's nothing wrong with a remedial massage. A lymphatic drainage is very gentle. It's done on the surface of the skin, and it's all about opening and closing the lymphatic vessels that are in the surface of your skin. So we're pressing 2 millimeters down. That's where those lymphatic vessels are. So if you're worried about pain and getting a manual lymphatic drainage, it's very uncommon for even lippy ladies to experience pain during a massage. So what we're doing is we're moving fluid. And here's where it gets tricky, because the latest research is saying that lipedema does not have a lymphedema component. So they're saying quite often that you don't need MLD, you don't need compression. But the anecdotal evidence is showing that so many women with lipedema actually do get swelling, and lymphatic drainage helps to reduce that swelling, and compression helps to reduce that swelling and reduce the pain associated. So while lipedema is not a lymphatic condition, there is absolutely an oedema portion. Oedema is swelling. There's definitely swelling in lipedema. So that's where lymphatic drainage comes in useful, to help manage that swelling. But also because in the later stages, what they're saying is there are 3 stages of lipedema. So there's lipedema, then obesity. Now, I disagree that every person with lipedema has obesity. I don't think that's true at all, but this is what the research is saying. Lipedema, obesity, and then they're saying that the obesity is what causes lymphedema in the later stages. Now, I do believe that those 3 separate conditions are a part of lipedema. I don't think you need to have all of them. And I don't believe that lipedema necessarily progresses from one stage to the last stage. You may have lipedema and you may never change from where you are now. It may stay the same. It may progress if you haven't gone through menopause, if you haven't had children. Sure, it may progress. It may not. We just don't know. So do not go into a panic about, oh my gosh, I don't want to get like those pictures that I see on the internet. If you're here now, if you've had a diagnosis, then you are going to get the help that you need to stop you from progressing to that stage that you see on the end. Those poor women have not got a diagnosis until it's too late. So compression, along with lymphatic drainage, compression, I talk about it with lipedema, and it seems counterintuitive that a painful fat disorder can benefit from wearing compression, because the thought of getting compression on when your legs hurt in itself is a barrier. And I get that. And quite often when you get a diagnosis, if you go to one of the surgeons who specialize in liposuction for lipedema, then they quite often want you to be wearing class 2 custom made flat knit compression. And that's a whole world of stress right there. One, it's very expensive. But if you have never worn compression before in your life, going from no compression to a class 2 flat knit is about 15 steps too much. So I always suggest any compression at the start is better than none. So if all you can manage is some compression exercise tights from Aldi or Kmart, then start there. Start there, get used to wearing compression, and then you can move into something a little bit more medically based. Having said that, I like to start a lot of my clients off on BioFlect compression. I'll just lean over here and grab some. I don't know that you'll be able to see it very well. So BioFlex are lymphatic stimulating compression. And I'm not sure that you can see that on here, but they have ribbed inside here, and that ribbing actually opens and closes the lymphatic vessels. Now, these aren't medically graded, so they are quite a gentle, they're probably about 15 milligrams of mercury. When you're wearing medically graded, you're looking at between 20 and 30 or 30 and 40. So it's quite a low compression, and they're actually very, very stretchy. What I like about the BioFlex in particular is they come all the way up here. So they're not cutting you across the middle. They come all the way up here, covering your whole belly as well. So they're quite a good option to start with. And I've recently found another similar type, Solidea. I can never pronounce that. So Solidea. They're an Italian brand, and they've got the ribbing as well, but they're actually medically graded. So it's got both of those things. So it's tighter down at the ankle and gets less tight as it comes up. But again, very, very stretchy. This is actually an extra large, and it's quite tiny. When I look at it, I sort of think, gosh, even I might struggle to get into there, but they're really, really stretchy. So those I find are a good starting place if you want to try some compression before going into the full medically graded stockings. Sometimes people recommend the knee highs. I'm not a fan of those with lipedema, just because it cuts in where the fat pad is, and that can be really painful. It depends if you have a fat pad or not. Not everybody does. I prefer the idea of the full pantyhose, just so that there's no cutting in to the tops of the thighs or the tops just under the knees, because that can then cause pain and even bruising if you're easy to bruise. So compression, it's an evil necessity, let's put it that way, but really, really beneficial. And once you get used to wearing it, and once you find the right type for you, once you put it on, you're not even aware that you have it on anymore. Now, here's the other thing. Compression is expensive, and it is trial and error. If I could say to you that use this type of compression, it's going to be perfect for you, then, you know, my job is done. But that's not the case. It is very much trying different brands, different styles, and seeing what works for you, because lipedema is such an individual disease, that there is no one panacea for the whole thing. And that's why it gets so frustrating, because finding what works for you can be really tricky. If you have any questions on compression, just throw them into the chat box and I will answer those. What I teach my clients to do, because not everybody can afford to come in for lymphatic drainage and not everybody can afford to buy compression. It's an expensive condition. It really is. So I try and teach my clients how to do dry brushing, how to open up your lymph nodes yourself, and how to do some dry brushing. So it gives you some tools to look after your own condition without having to rely on anybody else. So I'll just put some links into the chat here. And the last link that I've put in there is my video on how to do the dry brushing yourself, how to open up your lymph nodes. So I'll show you quickly how to do that, just in case you don't want to go and look at that, just so that you have an idea now what to do. So we always start, all lymphatic work starts up at the neck, at the base of the neck here, in this little triangle that I have going on here. So if you find the middle there, you'll see there's a little bit of an indent. And I get 2 flat fingers and I drop them, I cross my hands over, because then that puts you in the right place. And I do 10 little slow circles, stretching skin. And that opens up the lymph nodes right up the top here. The lymphatic system joins in with the vascular system, then comes through your heart, through your kidneys. And this is where the two of them connect. So this is one of the most important places that there is. So the second place is under your armpits. And I keep my hands flat. And I do 10 circles under each armpit. Make sure you're not digging in, because everything in lymphatic is about being gentle. Now, one of the most important things you can do for your lymphatics is belly breathing, because over 50% of your lymph nodes are in your abdomen. And a lot of people shallow breathe. We breathe up to the top here instead of into our bellies. We need to activate our diaphragm. So the cheat's way of doing that, again, hands in between the chest, and you breathe in and move. And then breathe out. And when you do that, even if you can't feel it to begin with, that's raising your diaphragm and creating a high pressure system in your abdomen, which opens up the lymph nodes. And then the last part, which you probably, let's do this. The last part is I actually just do, because you've got lymph nodes through here, I just do some leg lifts. So bringing them to the front, and that's going to open up the lymph nodes here. So that's how you open up your main lymph nodes. And then the dry brushing, I'm just doing a very quick demo here. So get a dry brush that's quite soft. And obviously you're going to be doing this on skin, not over your clothes. And you always start with the top part. So you're sending fluid towards the lymph nodes that you've opened. So you've opened lymph nodes here, you've opened lymph nodes here. So you're directing fluid there. And then you come down and do the bottom half. So always the top half, then the bottom half, always coming towards the lymph nodes. And the nice thing about using a brush is you put the brush down and you move it. No pressing down. If the bristles are all bent like this, then you're doing it too hard. Put it down, move it. That's the right pressure. So your back, you can do how you like. Your tummy, you're going according to digestion. And this is all in my video as well. So you go left, down, up, across, down, up, across. Then I'll get the leg out again. So with the leg, it's just like with the arm. You're doing the top half and you're directing it towards the lymph nodes because you've opened those. You can actually do the back as well. Make sure you get behind the knee and the sides of the knees, and then you're coming down to the bottom half. And you do that on both sides. Now, once you've done that, then you jump in the shower, wash it all off because you're also getting rid of some dead skin cells, and make sure that you moisturize because skincare is incredibly important for maintaining good skin. But if you get breaks in your skin, then you're prone to getting infection. So you want to avoid infection at all costs. It's not ideal for somebody who's got lipedema or lymphedema. So a bit of dry brushing is really beneficial to getting your lymphatic system working really well. And if you do have some compression, then you'd put your compression on after doing the clearing. And that breathing, we recommend doing 5 breaths 5 times a day to help stimulate your lymphatic system. That's also going to stimulate your digestive system, your cardiovascular system, your nervous system. All of these systems benefit from the deep breaths. So I really recommend doing that a lot. Okay, so we've talked MLD, we've talked compression, we've talked dry brushing. Now, compression, there's also nighttime compression, and I sometimes negotiate with people who go, I am not wearing that during the day. It's too hot, or I don't want people seeing it, or it's just too uncomfortable. And I have nighttime compression options. So I'm going to show you a couple of those. This one looks a little bit cumbersome. I actually put this on my older clients who have issues with hand strength or shoulder strength, and they can't get things on and off easily. So anybody who just can't get compression on full stop, this is a good option because it opens up really wide and has Velcro. So it's easy to get on and get off. And it's got little non-slip things on the bottom, so you can actually pad around the house wearing it. It's designed for nighttime use, but I have lots of people who wear them during the day if they're working from home, or if whenever they're home, they just throw that compression on, and that really helps. Another option, that's called Mobiderm. That's the Mobiderm AutoFit, just in case. This is another option. This is the Comfy Wave. And it's a similar idea in that it's got grooves in it, and the other one has squares, so they're textured. Again, really comfortable to get on and off. This one is made from cotton, and it is also designed for nighttime use, and a lot of people find this a very, very good option, particularly post-surgery. These are a good idea. They both come in short, and they come in the full thigh, up to the thigh highs as well. So those are my 2 favorite nighttime options when I'm negotiating with people that, well, if you won't wear it during the day, I get that. Let's wear some compression at night. Again, all of these are expensive, but this is a condition that's not going anywhere. So it's something to think about. And don't rush off and do everything all at once. I would recommend doing one thing at a time, seeing if that works, and then adding the next thing. Otherwise, you just don't know what works, and you end up spending a heap of money, and you may not need everything that you've got going on. Okay, so another thing I have a lot of my clients using is a pump. Now, it's called SIPC, and I always have to think about it. Sequential intermittent pneumatic compression. So what that means is it's an electronic device, and it's got this big bag type. You look a bit like the Michelin Man. So this is a leg, and this one has 4 chambers, and one chamber blows up, then the next, then the next, then the next. Then it releases, and it starts again. Blow, 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 blow. So it's mimicking what a therapist does as best a machine can. But what it means is you can hire that pump. There are two that I recommend. This one is the MediRent, and you can hire that pump, try it, see if it works for you. If it does, then fabo, you can continue renting it, or you can buy it and they give you the first 3 months off the purchase price, which I think is great. If you don't like it, you can send it back, no questions asked. And the other one is the Opal model, which I don't have a sample of here. That's an excellent model as well. I believe you can trial it for 2 weeks, but then you have to either purchase it or give it back. It's excellent. Both of them have, both MediRent and Opal have leg compression, and then they've got body compression that comes from the waist, from the just under the breast down. Opal also has a full body one as well if you've got issues throughout your whole body. The ones to here, while they sound fantastic, they are not advisable for everyone. So if you have had abdominal surgeries, or if you have Crohn's disease or any abdominal issues, then you don't want to be putting compression on that. You just don't know how that's going to react. And so if you've got any abdominal issues, then we recommend just the legs. You can get both of those for the arms as well, but you can't use the arms and legs at the same time. It's an either or thing. But that gives you the opportunity to have treatment at home every single day. Now, it's not the same as getting MLD, but it means that if you're doing that at home, then you can probably space out your lymphatic sessions so that you're coming in less frequently and you're getting stimulated lymphatics every single day. And even better is if you've got something like the Comfy Wave or the BioFlex that I showed you at the beginning, you put those on underneath the pump, so it's got the extra lymphatic stimulating as well as the compression of the pump. So they work really, really well together. And it's about being creative to find out different ways that you manage your particular body and to see what works for you. So the pumps are a fantastic option, and there are some therapists who you can go and trial a pump at. I sometimes, well, I use mine in clinic, and quite often what I'll do is when somebody comes in and they're like, well, I'm not sure I want to do that, I actually put it on one leg and then manually treat the other so they get to try it, but are still having a manual treatment as well. And general, I haven't met anybody who's gone, no, I'm not going to do that, because it's actually very, very relaxing and you can feel a difference. They always say that the manual stuff, that leg feels like it's cleared more, but they can feel a difference in the pump leg as well. So I highly recommend those. One of those two brands, great. There are a lot of other brands on the market, and I'd just like to say that you get what you pay for. So if you see something on eBay for $200, you're getting $200 worth of technology. There's a lot of work that's gone into designing these pumps, and I've spoken with the suppliers extensively. A lot of research has gone in, and a lot of talking with therapists and patients as well to get the best results possible. Okay, so those are my mainstays. Those are what I recommend to everybody. But then there are lots of other types of things that you can try. So they're vibration plates. And what is recommended is an oscillating vibration plate. And that means you have a board that does this as well as this. So it's doing in two planes. And that seems to have the best result for lipedema and lymphedema. Now, we're not talking about the little Revitive thing that you see advertised on TV, which that's great for, that may help with the aching and the soreness and that sort of stuff, but that's not necessarily going to help with your lymphatics. They can, again, be very expensive. I know lots of people who've got them on Facebook Marketplace at a fraction of the cost. So get creative, buy a secondhand one and see how you go with that. It's definitely worth a try. Like I said, I wouldn't be rushing off to get a pump and a vibration plate at the same time. So trial one of those, see how you go, and then you may not need another, or may not work for you and you might want to add something else in. So the vibration, there's really good evidence that it helps to stimulate the lymphatics. The trick is low frequency. So you're not putting it on 10 or 100 if it goes to 100. You're putting it on a low speed and you're only on there for 2 or 3 minutes. So it's not about being on there for an hour. That is too much for your lymphatics. And in fact, for your lymphatics, it's unlike all the other systems in your body. More is not better. Softly, softly, gently, slowly. That's how we work with the lymphatics, because the lymphatic fluid is thicker than blood. You know, blood, if blood is like water, you spill it, you can move it really easily. Lymphatic fluid is a bit more like soft honey. So it's thicker. It doesn't move as quickly as water does. So it's all about being soft and gentle to move the lymphatics. It's a completely different headspace to all other forms of massage. Not that there's anything wrong with the other forms of massage. Okay, another thing I like to recommend is rebounding. Now, a rebounder is one of those mini trampolines that, you know, we've all had at various stages and we don't use it and then we throw it away or give it away, myself included. Those mini rebounders, what they do is they get your feet doing this pumping action. And what that does is it stimulates the muscles in your calf. So if you imagine that's your leg and you're doing this muscle is getting activated, and your lymphatic system needs muscle activation to get it to move. So by going on the rebounder, you're actually stimulating your entire body to move lymph. And it's hard work. It's actually really good cardio. And you don't actually have to jump very high. So it can just be about moving your body weight. It doesn't have to be a jump and getting off of the actual base at all. It's just about getting this movement happening. It's excellent cardio. It's gentler on your joints than, say, running, which is going to really jar your knees and your ankles and your lower back. And it's fantastic for stimulating your lymphatics. So I would suggest, you know, starting with even 2 minutes, because it's much harder than you think. It's actually a really strong cardiovascular, and working your way up. And if you need to, if your balance isn't great, you can put it in the doorway and then hold on to the doorway while you bounce, so that you're not going to be going flying. Even better, they come now with little railings around them, so you can just hold on. So get creative about how you try some rebounding. If there's a trampoline out in your garden that your kids use, go get on the trampoline. The kids will think it's hilarious, but it's actually doing your lymphatic system a world of good. Of course, if you've got pelvic floor issues, you want to be careful about that. And then you might want to throw in some pelvic floor exercises as well. That's a whole other topic. I'm not going there. One of the exercises that I recommend the most, and which of course gets the biggest resistance from my lipoedema clients, is walking in the water. And I get resistance, and I understand it. In Sydney at the moment, it is freezing, and the idea of going into the water is not pleasant. And I won't be in the ocean for many months to come, so I feel you. But you can get into a pool at an aquatic center. They generally will have a lane for walking up and down, and the pools are heated. Quite often they've got pools that they use for aqua aerobics, and those are a little bit warmer. Aqua aerobics is fantastic for lipedema as well. And I understand the resistance to getting in swimmers if you are bigger and self-conscious about your body. I get it. I understand. And so if that's not for you, I get it. But it is by far one of the best exercises you can do. And I'll explain why. So I talked at the beginning about medically graded compression. And what that means is the compression down at the feet is tighter, it's more compression than up the top. And it kind of comes in this graded, getting more and more gentle compression the higher up you go. And that encourages fluid to move up the leg or up the arm, depending on what you're compressing. And what they use to measure compression is milligrams of mercury. That is water pressure. So when you are standing in a pool and walking, or even just treading water in a pool, you don't even need to walk, you have more pressure down at your feet and less pressure up at the top here. So it's a natural gradient. So one, it's gentle on your joints. Two, you're getting graded compression. And three, you have that extra resistance of exercising in the water. And sometimes, depending on what's going on when I go down to the pool, if there's nobody there, I'll just go into the middle of the pool and tread water, because that keeps me upright, and that's working my core muscles as well, which is getting me to use my diaphragm and breathe more, which is stimulating my lymphatics even more. But if it's busy, then I'll stick to the walking lane and bomb up and down as many times as I can until I get bored or cold, or both. But it is by far one of the best exercises for your lymphatic system. Now, there are swimmers that you can get, like rashies for your top half, you can get the equivalent rashies for your bottom half, so that it's covering up your skin if you can't bear the thought of being seen in public, if your skin, having it all hang out. And somehow emotionally having your skin covered up makes it easier to be out in public, I think. So I've been told by many of my clients who do this. Wearing the full body swimmers, if you like, nobody really bats too much of an eye, and it gives you a bit of privacy if that helps in any way at all. But I understand the resistance to getting into swimmers and getting in the pool in public. If you've got a pool at home, then knock yourself out, as long as it's heated. Although the colder water is even better than warm water, much more effective for the lymphatics. Hot makes you swell more. So that's something that you need to keep in mind as well. Your swelling's probably going to be a little bit worse in summer, or if you go somewhere hot. We don't advise saunas or steam rooms, although for some lipedema patients, works a treat. So again, it's trial and error. There are no hard and fast rules, because what we may say you shouldn't do may be the thing that brings you the greatest relief. So if you know that you swell up in the heat, don't go in a steam room or a sauna. But if you're not sure, you can try. Or if you don't swell up in summer, then you can try the heat and see if that helps with any of the aching or muscle tightness that you may have. Anything is worth a try, but just listen to your body, listen to the reaction, and see how you feel afterwards. And always remember, after any exercising or getting into heat, to make sure you drink enough water to replenish what you've lost. And actually, I know that there's fluid in your body, but quite often you're not drinking enough fluid. We need, depending on your weight, between sort of 1.5 to 2.5 liters of water every day. Now, not coffee, not black tea. You can have those, but for every cup of coffee or black tea that you have, you need to drink a glass of water to bring you back into balance. because it will remove the equivalent of 1 glass of water. It'll dehydrate you. So make sure if you're drinking coffee or black tea, you then follow it with a glass of water. It's very important. You can't count your coffee in your daily water intake. That's cheating. Okay, and then you can try some remedial massage. I know some ladies with lipedema who swear by getting a deep tissue. They get into their legs and absolutely blast them, and that makes them feel better. 90% of my clients would actually punch the person doing it, but you may be one of those that just loves that pressure and feel much better afterwards. The same with massage guns. The idea of a massage gun freaks me out, and I don't have lipedema, but I just think, God, they'd be so painful. But a lot of ladies with lipedema love them. Once they start using them and they get bruising to start with, but then the bruising settles down and they find it really starts to help release things. If you can cope with the pain, knock yourself out. Go for it. I personally wouldn't be doing it, but it may work a treat for you. So no judgment there. Then, of course, what I haven't talked about, which is probably the most contested topic of all, how do you eat? What way of eating? Because you've probably tried every diet known to man and perhaps lost a bit of weight and then put it all back on, plus more. And it's really confusing. Do you do keto? Do you do low carb? Do you do high fat? Do you do what? Carnivore? There's so many different options, and we are all bioidentical. So there is no one way of eating that is going to work for everybody or anybody, actually. I think it's important to experiment. See what resonates with you. So if you look at, say, something like the carnivore diet, which some people swear by, but it fills you with dread because, well, you don't eat meat, then that's not the one for you. You've got to find a way of eating that works for you. Now, generally, what I say to people is low carb, absolutely. Cutting all carbs out, I don't think so. I think we need some carbs in our body, and there's good carbs and bad carbs. So processed carbs, get them out. They don't have a place, not just in lipedema, but in health generally. The processed carbs we do not need. But a bit of pumpkin, sweet potato, carrots, beetroot, vegetables, some fruit, bananas and high carb berries, just eating real food. Minimize the carbs, get the processed out. Good quality meats if you eat meat, good quality protein, so pulses, tofu, obviously depending on allergies and sensitivities. A good quality protein, lots of veg, some fruit, lots of water, and get the processed foods out. And these days that is really hard. So anything that comes, a sauce that you buy in a jar, that's going to have lots of salt and additives that you don't know about. And just because something says it's organic does not mean that it is unprocessed. So for me, I'd be pulling out gluten because that's hella processed. But then going to the supermarket and going into the gluten-free aisle and getting gluten-free bread, gluten-free pasta, gluten-free cookies, gluten-free sauces, that's not the answer, because just because it's gluten-free, it doesn't mean it's not processed and that it's not inflammatory. What we're trying to do is reduce the inflammation in your body, because above all, lipedema is an inflammatory condition. So doing all of the things that you can to reduce inflammation, that's your focus. So the eating then becomes trial and error, because while all of they keep telling us, oh, we should be eating sauerkrauts, all those fermented foods, fantastic. And I love them, and my body hates them. I can't eat them regularly. I can have them once in a blue moon. But if I have all those beautiful fermented yogurts and sauerkraut, my gut bloats and I get pain. So while that's a healthy food and is completely recommended by everybody under the sun, I can't eat them. And the same for me goes with pulses. I can have them every now and then, but I can't have them regularly because my body doesn't digest them. So it is trial and error, and time consuming and frustrating and all of the above. I have a reset protocol that I do when I feel my body starts to blow up or I start getting pain. And if you want to find out about that, just get in touch with me, because I don't have enough time to go into that now. But it's an anti-inflammatory protocol and then challenging the body. And I've found that that is the best way to find out what is the perfect way of eating for you, because it's an individual thing. So, following keto, which has great results for so many people, for other people, it makes them really ill. A high fat makes a lot of people ill. Cutting out carbs, same thing. So it's about being sensible and not completely jumping 100% into one way of eating without feeling into your body to see what feels right. Because we ignore what our body's telling us. And if our body's going, please don't give me that anymore, and we say, no, but it's good for me, I'd be listening to my body over the it's good for me. Okay, so that's a whole lot of information about what I recommend to my clients when they come in for a first appointment and have no idea where to start with their lipedema. Are there any questions that any of you have that you'd like me to answer specifically? Because if not, then I'm going to talk about how you can work with me. Okay, well, that's good. So I've put up some links in the chat box. One is to Lipedema Australia, because I think they're an amazing resource. One is to my self-lymphatic drainage with dry brushing video. That's a free thing, nice and easy. I also have a little Facebook group that I'm not terribly active in. My hope was that I'd set it up and people would chat away and I'd contribute every now and then. That hasn't quite happened, but maybe it will in future when we get more people in. Maybe it won't. I post information in there every now and then, and that works okay. So it's called the Lipedema Conservative Care Facebook group, and the link is in the chat. And then the other link I've put in there is my Living Well with Lipedema package. So this is a mixed package that I've created to go over 12 weeks for somebody who's just been diagnosed with lipedema and has no idea what to do. And it's a mixture of lymphatic drainage, which obviously works really well if you live in my area. If you don't live in the area, we can do online consultations to formulate a plan for how you work with your lipedema, compression, exercise, nutrition, all that sort of stuff. So we can still do that. And I go over the lymphatic drainage, how you do it for yourself in more detail. So that is a possibility. If you're not anywhere near to me, we can still do an online consult. Then I've also got consults in for medical intuition. So that's a whole different technique where I am looking into your body to see where you are out of alignment and finding ways that we work together to help you come back into alignment. So that's looking at the emotional, mental, spiritual aspect of lipedema, because it's not just physical, right? You know that. It's a very emotional and mental disease because it stresses you and it upsets you. But there's also a spiritual aspect, things that we aren't looking at that we can find out about in a medical intuitive session. And that can also include things like what exercise you need, if you need any diagnostic tests, and nutrition. So we can talk about the reset protocol in detail in that. It can even be a little bit about supplementation, different types of therapies to try. It's a whole range of different information that we're looking at, and a whole different way of looking at bodies, because we are so much more than just our physical bodies. And that is about all I have. And I haven't had any questions. So if there are none, then I might sign off and say thank you for joining me. And if you did have any questions come up after this and you want to get in touch with me, then you can go onto my website. I'll just put it in here, lisahiggins.com.au. Or you can send me a message at lisahigginsmassage@gmail.com, or you can connect with me on the socials, Lisa Higgins Massage on Facebook or Instagram. All righty. I wish you a lovely night, and I hope this has been helpful, and no doubt I will see you out in the interweb sometime. Thanks for joining me.